So, here's the deal. 2 years ago, my dad retired as the CEO of his lab equipment business, a company he built from the ground up. For almost 7 years, he promised that I'd be the next in line to take over. I'm 30, and this was like my lifelong dream. But on the day of his retirement party, out of nowhere, he announces that my brother in law, Zach, will be the new CEO. Man, I was blindsided. I had planned this whole party and had zero clues this bombshell was coming. Everyone cheered, and I had to clap along, though I felt absolutely crushed inside. Later, when I confronted my dad, he told me that I was a disappointment. Ouch. He said Zach was more of a son to him than I was. What? Zach had only been involved with the company for about a year, while I'd devoted 7 years of my life to it. We've known Zach for a long time. He and my sister have been together for 5 years, married for 2. Before all this, Zach seemed like a good guy, but hearing my dad say he was more of a son than me really stung. When I pressed my dad on why he thought I was a disappointment, he gave me a reason that felt like a slap in the face. He told me that he thought I was too mentally weak to be a leader because I have general anxiety disorder. I had made the mistake of opening up to my family about it a few months before my dad retired. I accidentally dropped a small container of my prescribed anti-anxiety pills during dinner one night, and I had to explain everything. My mom was cool about it, but my dad? Not so much. He's the kind of guy who believes being tough is the answer to everything. After that dinner, he totally lost faith in me. He said my anxiety made me unfit to lead the company, even though it never affected my work. He saw my condition as an excuse for weakness. After stewing over it, he decided that Zach, who apparently shared more qualities with him, was the better fit to take over. He told me I was free to leave if I wanted, but he couldn't trust me with his company. It hurt even more knowing he'd made up his mind long before the party, but still led me on. That night, I left the party early and never spoke to my dad again. It was his company, so if he thought my anxiety was an issue, I had to respect his decision. But I didn't have to tolerate the disrespect. I resigned and found another job within weeks. I've only kept in touch with my mom since then. When my sister found out I was quitting because Dad chose Zach over me, she took it personally. We fought, and we haven't spoken since. For the last 2 years, I haven't talked to my dad, my sister, or Zach. I only occasionally check in with my mom, and we meet up about once a month. Every time, she tries to get me to patch things up with my dad, but I'm just not interested. Then, about a week ago, my mom called me in a panic. Apparently, Zach got caught up in some tax fraud and was arrested. Now, even my dad is under investigation because of his ties to the company. My mom wanted me to speak to my dad, make amends, and testify for him in court if needed. I made it clear that I wasn't getting involved at all. If Dad is under investigation, other higher-ups will likely be scrutinized too. Zach's fraud charges are serious, and the last thing I want is to get dragged into that mess. I told my mom I wasn't sticking my neck out for my dad. The farther I stay from this chaos, the better off I am. So here's the deal. My family's got to handle this stuff on their own. I'm not looking for any drama. If my dad really wanted my help, he should have come to me directly. He's the one in need, so why should I be the one to make the first move? Then my mom jumped in, saying I was being childish and needed to talk to my dad to smooth things over. She was all about how we needed to stick together as a family during tough times. But honestly, I thought she was being unreasonable. I told her my decision was final. No way was I going to contact my dad. That made her mad, and she called me selfish and heartless. She thinks I'm still hung up on what happened 2 years ago, which I think is pretty unfair. If she were in my shoes, she would have felt just as betrayed. She wouldn't have gotten over being passed up for a position she worked so hard for over 7 years. And my dad never even apologized. How can anyone forgive someone who isn't sorry? So we argued for a bit, and I ended up telling her that what's happening with Zach and Dad might just be karma for screwing me over. After that, she went silent and hung up. I felt bad and thought about calling her back, but then I saw she'd blocked me. Now I feel super guilty about what I said. It's been a week since my mom blocked me. I haven't been able to reach her, and honestly, I feel really lost and alone. Sure, I have my friends, but she was the only family member looking out for me. It's hard to deal with, but I still believe I didn't say anything out of line. This might be karma for kicking me out of the company over something out of my control. Yes, I have an anxiety disorder, But it doesn't cripple my ability to lead or work. It certainly doesn't make me a disappointment, like my dad said. Those words from my dad at his retirement party have stuck with me for 2 years. His old school attitude towards mental health really messed up my self esteem for a while. It took a lot of time and therapy to work through it, but it never affected my job performance, and my current bosses think I'm one of their best employees. They even plan to promote me soon. I think my dad majorly screwed up, and if my mom can't see that, it's not my fault. It sucks that she's siding with him instead of telling him to apologize. I can't understand why she thinks I should be the one to make amends first. I'm not doing anything for the family until they genuinely apologize for everything. I'm done being used for their personal gain. On another note, my sister visited today. She was a wreck, needing help because her husband is in deep trouble, but it's a federal crime, and my hands are tied. She was crying and saying she had no idea about any of this. She wanted me to use my connections to bail him out. Apparently, one of my bosses is married to a federal judge, and they thought I could pull some strings. I told her straight up that I couldn't help and asked her to leave. I get that she's desperate, but expecting me to do something like that is out of line. Hey, so here's the deal. My sister wanted my emotional support, but I just couldn't encourage or even entertain that idea. I had several reasons, the main one being that I didn't want to bring this up with my bosses. I didn't want to be linked with a family of frauds. Plus, I have my own morals and ethics. I didn't wish anything bad for my sister, but if Zach really committed tax fraud, I didn't want to be dragged into trying to help him out or influence the situation in his favor. Honestly, it wasn't even personal. I just didn't want to get involved. The most I could do was offer emotional support, but expecting me to go all out was just crazy. When I said no and asked her to leave, she sulked and accused me of holding a grudge against her husband for something that wasn't his fault. I tried to explain that this wasn't about that issue. In fact, I never blamed him for what happened with my father. My dad decided to give him the position instead of me and let him take over the company. If I were in his place, I might have accepted the position too. So maybe I resented him a bit, but I didn't hold a grudge. He wasn't important enough for that. I tried to tell my sister this, but she refused to listen and said our mother was right about me being petty and selfish. We ended up fighting again, and I told her to leave my house. She insulted me after everything that happened, even though I tried to comfort her. She never did the same for me when I was having a tough time. She actually fought with me because she took it as a personal attack. 2 years later, she was still doing the same thing. So if anyone was being petty and selfish, it was my family. Her comment about our mother being right about me stung because, for the past 2 years, my mom was the only one there for me. Now it felt like she was never really there at all. I was already hurt, and my sister refused to leave. She just kept standing there, saying hurtful things. Eventually, we started screaming at each other so loudly that I couldn't even make out what she was saying. We ended up cursing each other out before she finally left. I feel terrible about everything that's going on, but I also feel like they deserve the bad things happening to them. I regret trying to be there for my sister because she was acting crazy. They don't deserve my time or energy anymore, but for some reason, I find it incredibly hard to cut them out of my life completely. I keep thinking about our childhood and how close we used to be, and it breaks my heart to even talk about it now. All of this just genuinely sucks. I wish it would be over soon. Update 3. So, it's been 4 days since my sister visited and we had that fight. No one spoke to me for those 4 days, and I almost thought they were going to leave me alone. But today, my parents finally showed up. During this time, I decided I wasn't going to let them in. I made the mistake of letting my sister in last time, and we all know how that ended. So, I wasn't going to repeat that mistake. They were standing outside the door, and I told them to leave. I really didn't think there was anything to discuss, and they couldn't possibly have anything new to say to me. My dad said he wasn't here to ask for any help but to apologize. After a long time, he realized he'd messed up badly. He knew that nothing he said could ever fix it, but the least he could do was try to talk to me and let me know he was really sorry. Honestly, that shocked me because I expected him to show up and start yelling at me or something. We haven't spoken since his retirement party, and I still remember him calling me a disappointment. I don't think I'll ever forget that. When he finished apologizing, I told him I was thankful he came all the way here to apologize, but forgiveness isn't that easy. He can't just say sorry and expect everything to be fine, especially since we haven't interacted in the past 2 years, and he never made an effort to talk to me before. I told him I needed my time, and even then, I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive him. It wasn't just about him screwing me over 2 years ago. It was the fact that it took him 2 years and a lot of trouble to realize he'd messed up and finally come to talk to me. That's the part that hurts the most. Even after everything, I was still feeling super down. I was waiting for him to lose it and yell at me, but instead, he said he was willing to wait for me to come around. If I decided never to speak to him again and didn't forgive him, he'd be okay with that too. He admitted that 2 years ago, he made a ridiculously bad decision. It wasn't that he didn't take my mental health seriously, he took it too seriously. He explained that all the men in his family, including his dad, were raised to be tough. They believed that you just had to fight through life, and people with anxiety or depression were just seen as weak and making excuses. So when he found out I was on anti-anxiety meds, he thought maybe I wasn't cut out to lead the company. Considering he built the business from nothing, he freaked out and made the worst call ever. He was scared and paranoid, which led to our fallout. After we stopped talking, he was mad at me for a couple of months, but then he started second-guessing himself. He read up on anxiety and realized he might have symptoms too. He wanted to reach out and mend things, but then the whole Zach fiasco happened, and he couldn't. After hearing all this, I felt really weird. I don't know how to feel, but at least he apologized. I know 2 years is a long time, but it means a lot to me. I don't know if I'll forgive him soon or if his apology is even genuine, but I'm willing to think about it. I told him to go home, and I'd contact him if I felt like it. He respected that and left. As for my mom, we didn't get much time to talk. She apologized for her behavior and my dad's. At the end of my chat with my dad, she said she was ready to wait for my forgiveness. She admitted she might have reacted too quickly and harshly, rather than trying to understand what I was going through. She also mentioned that my sister wanted to apologize too. I told her my sister is an adult and should apologize herself. I get that she's dealing with Zach stuff, but it doesn't excuse how she treated me last time she visited. So most of my family has apologized, and now it's up to me to decide whether to accept it or not. It's a tough decision. I've spent 2 years without any of them, except my mom, and even that's shaky right now. On one hand, I want to forgive and move on, because holding on to resentment isn't helping. But on the other hand, I'm not sure if forgiving and moving past everything is the right call. I miss my family a lot, and it's all messing with my head. They might be apologizing because they're in trouble, but I've made it clear I can't help them, and even if I could, I wouldn't. It's a matter of principles for me. If they're genuinely trying to fix things, it complicates stuff even more. I guess I'll sleep on it for a few days and see what I want to do. I'll keep you guys updated. Update 4. Hey everyone, I was finally able to log in after almost 4 months because I got super busy. I'll explain that later. Last time I posted, my parents and sister had apologized. My parents did it in person, but my sister was caught up with Zach, so she had our mom apologize for her. She visited a couple of weeks later and apologized in person. I told her the same thing I told my parents. I'd think about it and let her know. I took my time and, last month, told them I want to rebuild our relationship, but at my own pace. I suggested having dinner once a month and seeing how it goes. They were thrilled and agreed as long as I was happy. So, we had dinner a couple of weeks ago. It was awkward, but they were really trying to make up for the past by being extra nice. Zach wasn't there because my sister filed for divorce 2 months ago, and he was already fired from the company. My dad offered to make me CEO, but I declined. I need more time. He's handling the company for now and waiting for my answer. I'll think about it for a couple more months. For now, I'm just focusing on what I love, including my girlfriend. She's an old friend I started dating a couple of months ago, which is why I've been so busy. There's more to life than just work and family drama now. She convinced me to forgive my family and give them a second chance. I'm really happy we're together because I've liked her for a long time, but didn't want to ruin our friendship by asking her out. She made the first move, and now we're dating, and I couldn't be happier. So things are going pretty well for me right now.